I've literally just looked, and I've like 2 minutes ago, my LinkedIn automation sent him a sent him the thing saying, "Hey, I'd love you to listen to the podcast." Oh man, he must think I'm a fucking idiot. The first time I arranged
Nice.
this for like the wrong time, and then I've done this.
That's nice. Oh, by the way, we got one feedback. Maybe that's something we can leave in the recording. I got one feedback from someone that I didn't know saying that they really enjoyed it, but the background music is distracting sometimes, and it loses focus because of the music in the background. Maybe we should try it without the music. I don't know.
Interesting. I mean, the music is so quiet compared to other podcasts.
It's very quiet. Yeah, it's very quiet. So for this episode, I'm going to create a poll on Spotify. So if you listen on Spotify, look at your screen on your phone right now and tell us if you like it or if you hate it. And we'll make a decision based on that poll.
Maybe we can just replace it with like some drill or something.
some theater laughs. Maybe we could do some fake
awful.
laughs, like sitcoms in the 90s. Yeah, every time we say something, it's like fake laughing. Ha ha ha.
I don't know if you've noticed, but on a few of the videos, I added like little overlay things. Have you ever noticed them?
No.
So there's one when
What?
you're telling a story about OnlyFans or something, and I say something that's like makes me look like it's like an OnlyFans super fan, and then like some big eye emojis that come up on my face for a few seconds, and then sometimes
I didn't see that.
and then the first episode I said I was like, "Oh, you're like Dr. Nick, who appears in The Simpsons. Like, you might remember me from." But then when I listened back, I was like, "It's not Dr. Nick, it's Troy McClure." So then I put like a little subtitle on it. It says, "Actually, Troy McClure." For like the one person that's ever watched our YouTube videos.
Well, all the YouTube videos are getting close to 50 to 100 views, so some people are watching. Yeah. That's not counted into the podcast stats. As of day 43, which would be way in the past when this comes out, we got our first ever top 10 in the Apple marketing podcasts. So
yeah, it's very cool.
Clap to us. Clap to everyone who listened. That was a good effort. 43 days, top 10, easy peasy.
Was day 43 the 250 listens day?
Yeah, I think it's off the back of that. It gives us a nice benchmark as well. Like when you get to that zone, like the few hundred listens a day, yeah, I think you'll be close to the top 10 very often, or in the top 10. So
what kind of put it into context for me was we talking about listens, and quite quickly you can become like, 100 listens, cool, now I want to get 200, and it becomes like arbitrary, but then we worked out that based on our average retention of the videos, that day alone of 250 was like 3 days worth of solid listening in terms of like hours listened, which is crazy. And then you can work out like within the 3 days that preceded that day, we had like a week of listens in 3 days. So if you wanted to sit down and listen to that amount of that volume of podcast, you would have to just sit solidly for a week. And I was like, damn, that's like pretty mind blowing that we racked up that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's mind boggling that already after a few weeks there's that many minutes of content being consumed by so many people. Well, not so many people yet, but it's starting to add up. And it's cool, but it's scary at the same time.
Okay, so Marcus is in the lobby.
Open the door.
Hey, Marcus.
Hey, guys.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Good to see you, Marcus.
Nice to meet you.
I've only seen you so far in like a picture this size on my LinkedIn feed, so it's nice to see you in like a bigger. It's nice to see you have a body and a neck. It does. It's better looking on video, I think.
Yeah, but you don't know if I have kind of feet and legs yet. We'll keep that for another time.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
okay.
That's the problem with everyone being remote, isn't it? When you actually finally meet people, you're like, oh, you have got a body.
Oh, you're only like
Yeah.
150 tall. I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Yeah. Sometimes I've gone into the office and I've met someone for the first time. I'm like, shit, you're like 3 feet taller than I expected you to be. Thank you for jumping on at such last minute. You got a super busy schedule with your having become a LinkedIn influencer in the last month.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. No, I mean it's really just kind of this week because like next Sunday I'm going to fly to Korea to join Airbridge, the MMP.
Wow, they invited you to Korea to
They
speak.
did, yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
I'm excited, a bit frightened, but yeah, such a great opportunity. Roy, the CEO, seems to be really nice, and yeah, really looking forward to it.
Wow, that's
Amazing.
amazing. That's amazing. And that came all from starting to be posting on LinkedIn regularly.
Yeah,
Is that
pretty
the
much. I
driver?
started like roughly 2 months ago, and yeah, it's been going really, really well. I know, John, you're also into the LinkedIn game, and I listened to a few of the last episodes, so that could be a fun topic to talk about.
Yeah. We definitely will start about that. Maybe before we diving into LinkedIn, what you've been doing, and then go maybe a bit deeper into the stuff you talk about. Can you introduce yourself? Yeah, give you 2 minutes to give us a little bit of background, like who you are and like where you're calling from and things like that.
Yeah,
Go for it.
sure. So yeah, hi, I'm Marcus, calling from Berlin. Been living here for like 4 years now. So mostly COVID, but now finally the city is happening again. I've been in the industry for 11 years now, a little bit longer. Started my career in gaming back then at InnoGames, one of the biggest German strategy games developers. Back then, still on desktop, so web gaming, then moving to mobile. So yeah, I stayed for 7 years at my very first job in marketing, just because it was
Wow.
exciting times, a lot to learn, big budgets, really good place to kind of start the career. And yeah, but after 7 years, it felt like, okay, I need to leave the nest. Everyone else only stayed for 2 years, and I was there for seven. So I felt the urge to try something else. And yeah, I've been working with
Mm,
Blinkist afterwards and a few other subscription apps because subscriptions were kind of the rising hot topic. So wanted to check that
yeah.
out. And yeah, my last full-time job was ended last year in April. Back then, I was the lead growth marketing at Tandem, a language learning social network. But yeah, back then I took the decision that I wanted to go full-time consulting. Been doing it on the side a little bit for the last years already. I started becoming a mentor 2 years ago and felt like this is where I want things to move. And yeah, been doing that now for 9 months.
Amazing.
It's going well. I have
Yeah.
a good time, super motivated. Good choice.
Nice. Just 2 minutes. Bam. Well done.
Perfect.
I know you said you don't want to do this standard thing of talking about the host, the guest, and what they've been up to too much. So yeah.
Exactly. No, you did well. You did well. And it's good. It's good to for you to mention it just for the people who don't know you before we get into a topic and people are like, who the fuck is that guy? Why is this relevant? This is why it's relevant, because you've got a past and you've learned a lot of things and you became a mentor and you're doing consulting and stuff. So yeah, it's good to get the background. Cool. All right, let's dive
I
in.
got one quick question on the mentor thing. You're big on growth mentor, right? On the site. I know you and Rosie have like a bit of a rivalry going for the first position every week. She's coming on in a few weeks, so I can ask her about that as well. But how have you found like growth mentor as a platform?
Yeah, I actually don't remember where I first saw it. I think like someone else posted about it that I follow anyways and that I really trust. And them being on the platform for me, I went like, okay, like couldn't I do the same? So I had a chat with Foti, the founder, and he's really cool, and he brought me in. And in the beginning, I was not doing all that many calls. I don't know, it felt a bit like a lot of time go into them. I mean, you usually offer 30-minute calls. I prep them definitely for another 30 minutes so I can actually prepare value, and they're not free, so I'm not getting, they're not paid. I'm not getting any money from it. So yeah, I was only doing a few in the beginning, but then really ramped up over time. And what it mainly helps me with is really kind of imposter syndrome and knowing where the industry is at, because I don't know, it always feels like my knowledge, everyone knows this, it's clear. But then I'm in these calls and I see companies that are in a totally different stage and they haven't heard about any of it, and I can provide value in a really easy way. And that really, I think my decision to move from a full-time job to full-time consulting was a lot influenced by kind of this realization that I actually have something to add in all these calls.
Yeah, I think I find that super interesting, the whole imposter syndrome thing. And a few years ago, last year, I was going through it myself. I was kind of consulting and freelancing, and I was like, oh, just getting that feeling exactly as you say. Like everyone knows this, especially because we're in this bubble on LinkedIn of constantly seeing content, and you're like, oh, this person's putting out so much better stuff than I am. They must know more. Maybe I'm shit. I don't know this stuff. So I sent a message to not just people outside of marketing and inside of marketing, but like really successful people that I know, probably the maybe 15 most successful people that I know, and all of them came back and said that they still, even though they've been in a in their career for like 20, 30 years, they still have that feeling of imposter syndrome. I think it's really important to just tell people that that is normal. And I feel like it would be abnormal for you to feel like you were the smartest person and nobody knows any better than you. So it's, I always love it when people admit to having that feeling.
Yeah, I totally do. And like, it's also constant. Like, it's not that now after doing, I don't know, 80 sessions on Growth Mentor and like getting 5-star reviews, I feel like, I know it all. So every call, is always again like, okay, now I settle. It feels good, and now I feel like I can post something on LinkedIn and don't feel like I'm just talking bullshit.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's probably part of the fact that we're working in growth and marketing, that constant need to stay relevant, I think makes that imposter syndrome always kind of present in the background. It's like you've been doing something for a year, 2 years, whatever the amount of time, you're thinking, is that still the thing? Like, am I still in the weeds, like doing the right thing? And I guess like what you've been doing in Growth Mentor, like helped you overcome that, and in a way what we're doing with this podcast also helps us overcome that too, being close to people and people like you, talking to the most interesting people in growth and marketing and product. That's what we do. So we're all in this together.
Yeah, I can imagine like the first episodes must have been quite exciting as well, right? Kind of putting your voice out there, putting your face out there. Big step.
It's pretty scary, to be honest. It is pretty scary. And I can't remember who posted it now. It was a guy, I can't remember his name, which is bad of me, but he posted something on, I think it was on LinkedIn. And he was like, if you're trying to grow your personal brand, the hardest thing is just doing it. And at first you just have to do the embarrassing cringe. You're going to put a video out there. Your friends are all going to see it who don't do the same work as you. And they're going to be like, why the hell is he doing this? And it was definitely difficult to do. Made it a bit easier for us because there's two of us. So it's like half the cringe factor, I guess. But it was scary. And it still is nerve wracking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, until I finally hit kind of publish on that first post, it took me, I like nerded into the topic for at least half a year, if not longer, studying Justin Welch and all these big creators, buying courses, reading how to write. And like, before I finally did it. And then after a week, it was like, okay, this is actually fun. You get numbers, you have analytics, it's like performance marketing. I know what I'm doing here. And I could have done it half a year ago, but it took a while.
Yeah. You said something about just now. It's like growth marketing for yourself, and I think that's what you start seeing when you start posting content, whatever the content. It's like a game with yourself, So you stay relevant, but at the same time, you've got this like mini motivation that, you know, maybe you can get a little bit better, get a little bit more impressions, more engagements, mostly, become more relevant, and then suddenly you start talking to people you would never imagine would like talk to you, or, you know. So yeah, it's interesting. It's very like Inception type, like growth within growth.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely a bit addicting as well. I know. I know. I heard you talking about the dopamine hits on the other podcast, and I know the feeling.
Yeah, Jack, this morning you sent me I sent him the numbers, and he sent me the syringe emoji, and I was like, yeah, this is totally it. Like, this is like, I think my reply was like, shoot me, like with the syringe. It's really bad that we're using like drugs analogy.
But it's
anyway,
definitely true. And something that actually off the back of that conversation that we had through text was that what's really annoying on the podcast side, being like a performance marketer from like the backgrounds that we have, is that you get like the listens and the downloads and a very small number of stuff, but you don't get any idea into like the sources. So days will come, like yesterday, where we suddenly just got like 40 listens in like the space of an hour, and we're like, where did they come from? And you just can't see that stuff. So there's like this difficult side where you're so used to being with what we do, like everything tracked to the nth degree, getting your tracking sorted, getting your analytics sorted. But when it comes to podcasting, it's like the Stone Age again. It's like we had a guest yesterday and we were talking about dark funnels. It's like everything's dark. Stuff's coming in and you have no idea where it's coming from. So you just got to carry on doing everything that you're doing because you don't know one of those things might be doing nothing, but you have no idea. So you just got to carry on doing everything, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. Maybe Marcus, do you want to? You put a post out the other day, which was kind of breaking down some of the stats behind the success that you've had since you started posting on LinkedIn. Maybe we could like start there with, you can either tell us all those stats again or tell us what you found the most interesting, and just to give people an idea, because it's been a bit of a common theme of a lot of the discussions that we've had, is the kind of the power of LinkedIn, especially as a platform for getting exposure, building an audience and utilizing that audience. And then maybe off the back of that, we could talk about some of the most popular topics that you found on your posts, and we can dig into a few of those.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like I said, I started roughly 2 months ago. I'm up to like 18K, 19K impressions per week now, posting every day. And kind of I built these content buckets around app store optimization, paid social, high focus on meta ads, and then app onboarding and paywall optimization. So yeah, I'm mainly working with subscription app clients. And so yeah, kind of that's where my knowledge is. That's where I can share like experiment results if I'm allowed to, or like anything that could be interesting. Like previously, as I said, I studied all the big creators and how they do it and like their content systems. And now I feel like, okay, I'm not even applying half of that because I built my own thing and I could have just done that from the beginning. And yeah, what I mainly try to do is really always share something that's super valuable, because I don't like kind of all this fluff on LinkedIn. Like when I go through to comment on things, which is kind of what the LinkedIn gurus teach, like you need to comment before you post, you need to comment after you post. Oftentimes it takes me longer to find content that I can comment on than writing my post, just because there's so much like shallow things, and I feel like, okay, I don't want to comment another shallow thing on this shallow thing. Like why? And so I always try to go really into the details, share some advice, share something I've learned, really experiment results, actual things I've kind of put into apps that worked. And it's not the most viral thing. I think my biggest post got like 10K impressions and like 60, 70 likes or so. But the feedback I get from it is amazing. So I get a lot of leads coming in, so roughly like 3 people a week reaching out that want to either work with me or at least get some advice. And then, yeah, podcast invitations now going to Korea. So it feels like I don't need to worry about impressions or like really reach, but it's all about like sharing value, and then things will happen.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So it's really the quality versus quantity thing, and I agree with you. Like you really don't have, even though it's addictive, and eventually you might find tempted to like go into some things I started to do recently, like doing more memes, or that could still be relevant to what you talk about. If you know, it could be memes about Facebook ads, but it's the quality thing. Unfortunately, doesn't get the most engagement, but it gets you quality results, leads, and speaking opportunities, like flying to Korea. Like that's amazing. So yeah, that's interesting to hear you say that from the get go. How do you so you went from pretty much no traffic or very little traffic to, you said, like 18,000 a week impressions. What's your do you have like a system? Like how do you, like what I hear people say to me all the time is like, how do you do a post on LinkedIn every day or almost every day? Like what's your, I don't have time to do that, like I don't know what to talk about. Like what's your flow to get that done?
So I ideate using a notebook, like I have one here, and kind of write down ideas whenever I have some. Could be on my way anywhere, could be when I talk to someone on Growth Mentor, like a question that always comes up, could be in a client call. So really just writing things down. I usually just write a hook, and kind of hook writing is something you can really learn from all these kind of big creators. There is templates for it, there's systems. So kind of I try to phrase it as some kind of hook, have a notebook full of these, and then usually I just create my content on the day I post it, which is something I'd like to change, but I'm still a bit behind. So in the morning, I usually spend an hour on kind of making that hook into a fully fledged post, and then doing the game of commenting before and after. And as I said, the commenting usually takes me longer. Yeah. So if I could really get that system a bit better, where I have, I don't know, a list of 5 creators that I know also post daily and they post good stuff, that would really help me. Yeah. But it feels, at least in my niche, there is not so many people, at least not that post daily. It's mainly the D2C e-com folks that do so. And I do post on their comments because I like a lot of the stuff. And I'm also working with one D2C client, and there's a lot to learn there. But in the end, it's not my positioning, and that makes it a bit hard.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe you don't have to set things up in advance, because I know for me, I like the moment of writing. It's part of the pleasure of writing on LinkedIn is to come up. I have my ideas like you. I've got I'm using my notes on my phone, and if you remove that, and I had to like bulk create content weeks in advance, I think it will remove the fun of doing it. And so yeah, maybe you don't have to do that. Depends on what you prefer.
At least one day ahead would be great, because it can be a bit stressful in the morning. And it's like, okay, I have a call at 10, so this needs to go out before, and then I'm in the stupid LinkedIn feed looking for something to comment on, and it's like, oh my god. So like one day advance,
adding to that dopamine.
That would be great. Yeah, probably.
Nice.
Keeping that
no,
buzz
but
going.
Otherwise, like for me, also like writing things down in a notebook really helps. Like I haven't written anything in forever, and I can barely read my handwriting. But it's nice that kind of writing down ideas doesn't feel like work. I'm not sitting on a computer. I can do it anywhere. I don't know. I'm on the bus, on the metro, and just kind of ideating a bit, decoupled from work. And that really helps me to get kind of a creative flow. And yeah, kind of, I think that's a neat little hack.
Yeah. And man, just on that, because I thought I discovered something this morning, and I think it's relevant to this. I just got I'm late to the game, but I just got an Apple Watch. Don't judge me. And I discovered I can launch the memo app through the watch and record something I have in my head straight away into the watch, and it goes into my notes. So that's going to be game changer for me. I don't even have to type the idea on my phone. I can just say it to my watch. So I'm like, yeah, this is a game changer. Anyway, I just thought it was...
That's sweet, yeah. You're going to be a weird guy sitting on the metro talking about weird growth stuff into his watch.
Talking to hook number 1, hook number 2.
3 reasons why.
Yeah, I need to be careful.
Like this, I think it was in this like Cruella de Vil, like the cartoon thing back then with the dogs, and she was always like recording memo to myself. Yeah, will be a little bit like that.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, I love that. And what kind of content, Marcus, do you feel like at the moment is getting the most traction? I know I've commented on a few of your posts recently about utilization of first-party data. I know that whenever you talk about kind of app tracking and SCAD network and all that kind of stuff, people the engagement goes through the roof because everyone's always hoping that they're going to click on a post that's going to answer that question for them. But what is it in general, do you find that is kind of resonating meta right now in terms of growth and growth marketing?
Yeah, definitely kind of everything around tracking attribution scan is the hottest topic. I think there's still a lot of confusion around it. Many people haven't really figured out how to properly market on scan 3. Now the fourth version is coming out. So yeah, people are going crazy about it. And yeah, so those were definitely my most viral posts. Then like web to app is a really hot topic still, as also a way to get around scans. So kind of related. And then, I mean, generally creative strategy is always a good one when you get a bit more granular and it's not just these classic advice of like run static ads and run videos, or kind of try UGC, which is kind of 5 years old. But once you get a bit more into the details, like I, for example, talked about how to kind of create synergies between like YouTube partnerships and then bringing those into meta ads, how to negotiate deals for these. That's usually stuff that is also quite interesting to people, it seems.
Yeah, I love that. And what would be your,
Really
if
nice.
anyone's listening to this that's kind of struggling with changes to their app attribution specifically since the changes a couple of years ago, like what is the number one piece of advice that you tend to give people when you speak to them, when you kind of consult with people or when you mentor people specifically around that? It's like one thing to action, or you can action right now or think about right now that it's going to help you a bit, if that's not putting you on the spot too much.
So I mean, like one sentence to fix kind of the scan issues is a hard one, but I would say like one of the major issues is that usually there's silos between performance marketing and product, and kind of that's also where the scan break happens, and then it's even harder to match these two worlds. So like work closely, like as performance marketers, work closely with product and have a good kind of understanding of your product metrics. And the other way around, as a product person, like understand like which traffic is bought and how that influences your product metrics. And patterns will emerge, and you will like understand like how different channels are driving different behavior and intent. I think there's a little bit of an advantage if you've been in the game for a long time, because you still know these kind of behaviors from when you were able to track properly. But still, I mean, nothing has changed. You just don't have the view on that connection. And yeah, I think as a performance marketer, like what I often see is people just optimize for their trial start event as a subscription app. They try to bring down the cost per trial start as much as possible. And then on the product side, things crash. And kind of someone that starts a trial and does it for a cheap price isn't necessarily the best customer. It's kind of an upper funnel event. Yep. And you still have to kind of convert to a paid subscription, and you have to retain. And kind of you should understand that full funnel and really look into product metrics to get a better understanding of what's happening in scan.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still always amazed at the amount of businesses that have the kind of siloed approach to growth and also like marketing and product, and not even really considering it as like a kind of whole growth play. I thought what was really cool, something you put out quite recently, was the thought around trying to get as much user kind of submitted data once they're into the product as possible, so you can start looking at those splits, like the gender splits and the age splits that we were all used to love kind of optimizing into. I think that's really interesting, a nice way to do it. And then through that process you could also ask, where is it that how did you even find out about this at the product, and that can give you an idea as to channel if you kind of have that blindness. But something again was the discussion around utilization of first party data, and not with the concerns around or the issues that you have with an app in terms of like retargeting and the lower funnel stuff and all the events that you would be 3 or 4 years ago, you'd be tracking all of those events in the platform and building retargeting audiences off of that. And it's like people have just decided that they're just not going to do that anymore, or they're still going to optimize towards the very small number of events that they have, even though they have all of this data in their CRM system that maybe they're executing or that, you know, they're using, but probably not. You know, for an app, a lot of apps don't necessarily do the traditional kind of CRM email stuff. They might use their platform for some pushes and segment people by push. But I think really interesting to, again, it's like going back in time 5 years. It's another common thing that we have is like marketing now is doing things that we were doing like 5 or 10 years ago, manually uploading that data, making sure that you are thinking about what your segments are, how users move between segments. There's a really interesting Duolingo study that I saw, or again, it was another LinkedIn post, I think, and it was talking about all of the segment, how they divide their user base up into like 30 odd segments, and users constantly moving between those segments. And each of those segments has a specific role to play in terms of acquisition or retention or moving people between segments. And back when Facebook first started, we mentioned the other day on your post, it was almost like the golden use case, or sorry, when Facebook ads first came around, the golden use case that people discovered was we can just use this as an extension of our CRM system, you know. And back then you would be potentially buying likes for your page, and you could actually talk to those people. But also, it's like if I'm sending a message to this segment through email, I should always also be sending that to them as a retargeting message through Meta. And it seems that that's kind of gone away. People aren't doing that so much anymore. So I think what you said was super valuable to people. Just use that first party data as best that you can.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you still have kind of the same product data you had before. And if you can find these segments in the app, you get a very good understanding of like, okay, if I'm buying old traffic, but old traffic in my app usually isn't the best, then okay, maybe I shouldn't be buying it. And kind of the more you can segment users, the easier it will get to also match that to what you're doing on Meta ads. And it's not a direct match, but still you get a very, very good understanding of if you're moving in the right direction.
And when you use that first party data, I was going to ask, when you use the more first party data, is using lookalikes still relevant? Because I know I haven't used lookalikes for a long time now. Is it still a thing or not really?
Yeah, I do still use them. It's gotten a lot more complicated. But kind of, I mean, if you have enough data, then, and you uploaded it through a first-party data upload, such as kind of Excel sheet, not use the Facebook SDK, then like you are maybe going to be at like a 20 to 30% match rate. So Facebook is not going to find all that many users just because there's no IDFA, or maybe only a few. And yeah, that means you need to upload a lot bigger audience as a seed. So I always recommend like 10K at least, so that even if it comes down to only 20% match, you still have 2K in the seed audience, and that should be enough to build a reasonable lookalike. And yeah, I mean, especially for subscription apps, like as you can't optimize for that purchase, audiences just have totally different value. And by building a lookalike, that allows you to target much more specifically than just going broad. Everyone always is going broad because all the people talking on LinkedIn are the D2C people, and they are going broad because they optimize for purchase, which makes sense for them. Like Meta knows these are people that purchase, they have this value, so they can just find them for you. With a trial start, it just works differently. And that's where I still see value in lookalikes. Again, like you will then have to look into like, how does my product data behave? Because usually a lookalike can be even more expensive on a trial start or like these upper funnel events. But then the trial to paid conversion is a lot better. So you will have to kind of wait for a week and see how product metrics behave. And then you can gain confidence in actually buying that traffic.
And for keeping an eye on that kind of downstream revenue and understanding the LTV and how the CAC changes over time of what the customer does, do you have a kind of go-to stack? If someone's coming and they're building an app today and they wanted to put in place the best view that they possibly could to understand how their marketing investment, you know, what that investment actually was 6 months, 12 months later, what is it what tools or products do you typically suggest, if you use any?
Yeah. I mean, it's great when companies are working with like a product analytics tool like Mixpanel, Amplitude. Like with that, it's, I mean, fairly easy, I would say, to put things together, to break things down by age. Then also, if you're asking for age and onboarding, by gender, and look into like how do these different audiences behave. And also, if you have a kind of attribution survey where you ask kind of the channel that people came from, where did you hear about us, then you can build out a model where you say, okay, we're going to put a higher multiplier maybe on Facebook because we see the traffic is actually converting nicely down funnel, and a lower multiplier on TikTok, as usually that traffic doesn't perform as well in the app. And then it becomes a bit of a kind of analytics data task to kind of build a model around that. And usually, like, what I do there is pretty basic. Like, I look at retention rates, and then maybe I put in some multipliers saying, okay, Meta is definitely better than TikTok, but I've never built kind of a complex LTV model. And I think, like, from that stage, when you're running multiple channels and are spending a lot on marketing, someone that is kind of responsible of data and analytics is very helpful to have on board to build out that model.
That's a good one. I've got a recent-ish story on. So I live on Mixpanel at Nude. Like, we've got a very good setup, and we ask a lot of questions at the onboarding based on where people want to live. So it's an app for first-time home buyers. So they choose a postcode, and I, like most advertisers, Broad was our friend. And when you do Broad in the UK, your traffic tends to, go to London by a mile. You get a lot of coverage in London because of the density, and that makes sense. And I looked into Mixpanel, and I was like, let me just check a breakdown by postcode, by city, and see what I see. Man, the stuff I saw, I was like, I'm not going to share exact numbers here because people might be listening, but I was like, I'm so glad we asked that question, because it was like triple, quadruple full funnel conversion on some of these cities, and I was like, I don't care if I spend 2 times, 3 times the cost of an install. I'm going to target those cities with that data. And, I kid you not, like that increased the overall conversion for the whole business by 2x. Yeah. From a week to another, we 100% increase our conversion rate on the business. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Just because we had that data on Mixpanel, and we asked the right questions at onboarding, and then pull that data back into advertising.
Yeah. That's exactly the use case. One other answer to the tool set, of course, like also just the App Store console and Play Store console are a very good starting point. Like, if you kind of a new startup, don't bring in Amplitude for like horrendous costs. Like, you can build your basic model just based on what you see in App Store, Play Store, and you're only going to have one channel in the beginning, so it's going to be fine. Like, you're going to, like, if something moves in revenue, it's pretty clear where it's coming from, and then you can figure out, like, what does that mean long term. And on your city example, very good example. And in that case, it does make sense to interfere with the algorithm because it clearly doesn't know what it's doing. And I always hear these discussions of like, this is the perfect setup, this is how you do it, but it's just different by kind of your business type, by the event you are able to optimize for. And especially with sub apps, it's just, you are mostly optimizing for a upper funnel event. I always recommend to at least use a trial start plus some kind of engagement happening afterwards, so that you're not just sending exclusively the trial start. But still, like, you don't know the trial conversion, and the algorithm will think, okay, your main business goal is bringing in trial starts and do it as cheaply as possible. And maybe that's the case in London, but trial to paid conversion is much better in other cities. And that's when you need to interfere either by adjusting your targeting and maybe doing kind of city splits, which does kind of decrease reach, which is going to hurt performance, or think about how can you target these other regions based on your creative, and maybe, I don't know, show areas from these cities in your creative with your message on top, so that they get, hey, this is exclusively, or that this is targeted towards me, without you having to decrease reach.
Exactly. And you mentioned adding something on top of the trial start, and I think I saw your post on LinkedIn about this. Can you mention like a couple of examples? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, I mean, with Scan, you can track events, or like you have to send your post back to Facebook within the first 24 hours. So basically you can set up an event stream that includes anything up until the first day, which means, I mean, the trial start usually happens 30 minutes, if not quicker, after the install. So you still have roughly 24 hours to go for it to track something. And so basically try to find a meaningful event that then correlates more highly with conversion. So it's usually a trial start plus some kind of activation event. Maybe you see that kind of your best users log in three times on the first day already. So kind of do a combination of trial start and 3 logins, or they need to do any kind of other meaningful activation event. Like, I don't know, maybe in your example, it's finishing up their profile, their account set up, and then okay, these people are actually engaged. You can still send that back to Facebook, and you will be able to break down these people only started a trial and these people actually started a trial and have engaged. And of course, those are going to be more valuable in the end.
It's really interesting and important, I think, for people that are starting out, businesses that are starting out, apps that are starting out, to you can get seduced and be like, we're going to pay for apps for life on day one. But in reality, like you say, it's going to be a long time before you even need to really consider folding in a second channel. And of all the businesses that you and the products that you kind of mentor and talk to, could you give us like a rough idea of how many utilize any more channels than Meta and actually need to be doing that or have success doing that versus those that are just kind of trucking along, folks doubling down on just focusing on getting that channel optimized before they start saying, we've reached capacity, we're going to fold in TikTok, for instance? Do you see that is something that a lot of people do and they waste their time doing? And how many businesses do you find actually warrant moving into another channel?
Yeah. So, I mean, most of the businesses I work with are like early to mid stage. So I don't like work with very scaled companies at the moment. I'd love to, if anyone's out there. I would like to spend some more budgets again. But generally, I see people moving into other channels too quickly. So like, there's like, I always see these companies like spending 30, 40K a month, and they're already live on 3 channels. And it's like, okay, it's just a team of 4 people. You don't have a dedicated performance marketer, and you have to support kind of a lot of creatives on TikTok, then also on Meta ads, and then someone needs to know how to do search because you're also running Apple search ads or then Google ads on top, which also comes with YouTube. So kind of it builds quite quickly the amount of time you need to invest in this. And you can spend 40K very easily on Meta ads, and the results are going to be better if you really learn how to do that one channel. So I would always recommend like test in the beginning, like decide on 2-3 channels that feel like a good fit, and then give it a good try, spend some meaningful budgets, but then double down on the one that's working. And for most apps, Meta ads is just a very, very interesting one to start with, just because kind of testing is so easy. You can really kind of dial in your messaging, and creative just makes it easier also to differentiate from other apps. If you're going for Apple search ads as your first channel, your store page is all you have, and there are these massive companies that have optimized this for years. They have much higher LTV than you, so bidding on these few generic keywords that are there can be quite tricky. So yeah, rather focus on one channel than going too broad, and that's what I see often. And when it comes to the tool stack, there's always these 2 extremes that some people don't want to invest in any tools. They're like, no, like we're going to figure this out on our own, or they are already way too well stacked at an early stage, and they have an MMP, they have mixed panel set up, and they have kind of their ASO tool and everything on top, and it feels like, okay, like you just launched your app. That feels like a lot.
Yeah, they're overdressed.
Yeah, it's like double the marketing budget in contracts. Something I wanted to kind of touch on a bit there. So you mentioned the kind of creative required to successfully kind of nail TikTok, and also to the same extent the creative testing required to get Meta working in a way that you want it to. Do you have a preferred kind of creative testing, maybe less top line strategy and more, if you want to share this, if you're happy to share this, how you approach the individual kind of campaign ad set, ad structure for testing, or how you would suggest that? Because whenever I come to do creative testing, I'm like, I never have the same process that I go through. It always seems to be different. I'll either be doing multiple ads, same ad set. I'll be like, for this campaign, I'm going to break things out separately. I never standardize on like one way to do it. And I know you're probably going to say it doesn't work the same for everyone, but I'd just be really interested to know what your structure for doing that would be.
It depends.
Or at least a suggested starting point. Let's
So
say, add a bit more to the question, I guess. Let's say the company had enough creative resource to be iteratively generating and testing creative, so that wasn't necessarily a problem. It was just, how do we structure this in a way that we actually do our testing correctly?
yeah. So like when you're first starting out and kind of you have your first campaign set up, your first ad set, you're going live, I would say kind of everything is a test, and you don't need to structure it in a way that you have kind of a campaign that you want to scale and a campaign that is your experimentation campaign, because there is no data. You will have to learn from everything. And kind of until you're spending like more than 5K a month or so, that's also how I would treat it. So usually I would have one campaign, one ad set, and that's where everything is happening. And I'm just trying to make good bets on like which creative do we want to try. But of course, at any point, performance could dump just because you're throwing in a creative that doesn't work. It resets the learning phase, and then maybe things don't look so good. But still, at 5K, like as I said, everything is a test, and you're trying to figure out where to move things. Once you're at a bit of scale, like I would say, like always test in a separate campaign ad set. I mean, could even be the same campaign, but just a different ad set. And kind of if iOS is the platform you're only running and you also want to test on this, then you have to keep in mind that at least with Scan 3 at the moment, Meta doesn't have creative level data to actually give you results, which means all you see on a net level is based on them predicting it. So they look at kind of their on-platform metrics like click rate, engagement, and all this other stuff. They say we have tracked, I don't know, 50 trials coming from an ad set, and we distribute them on the ads as we see fit, which for creative testing is not great.
That's good.
So basically, if you do creative testing on iOS, I would always recommend that within one ad set, you only test against each other ads that are kind of a similar concept. So kind of they have a similar angle, talking to a similar audience, because then you can be sure, okay, down funnel performance will be kind of similar. And I'm only looking for kind of what has the best hook rate, what has the best click rate, and that Meta is able to find on platform metrics. And if you have a totally new angle, testing a different audience, then rather use another ad set, because then you can actually see if that creative does better or worse on a creative level, because you separated it out. And again, optimizing for a trial event plus activation event is gonna uncover a lot more things than when you're just optimizing for a trial start, because you get that additional funnel step in, and a lot can happen between trial start and trial to paid conversion. Oftentimes creatives that are very, very engaging and some kind of like clickbaity tend to perform worse down the funnel, but then kind of you only look at upper funnel, everything looks great, but then performance tanks along the way. So those would be my two advice.
Interesting. I just learned something. So you can't, on app, the numbers, the results, or what you optimize towards to on the creative level is basically all made up. You can still rely on the click-through rate, the hook rate and stuff, the retention on that. But the data they put to the install or the trial or whatever is basically distributed kind of, they're trying to predict it, so they're trying to be correct, but it's not accurate at all. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, depends if it's accurate at all, but it's definitely estimated by them. And of course, they are going to be influenced by the on-platform metrics. And again, like I think it's a very, very usual case that like strong early engagement means that something might go wrong down the funnel, especially if you're kind of pushing it, you're working with like visual hooks that are just like, they look weird, they try to draw in people, so you have a lot of engagement on it, and then just down funnel looks worse. And in that case, like really split things out just to make sure that Meta can estimate properly.
A wild difference between the hooks that are within an ad set. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I mean, I think basically if you're saying, hey, this creative targets a similar audience and like you're not expecting totally different down funnel behavior, that's when you can group them. And that's the part where it really depends on like what your creative look like and whom you're targeting. But kind of in one ad set, it's rather basically testing iterations against each other, split out ad sets if you're testing completely new concepts. That's how I would usually phrase it.
Yeah, I love it. And that's great. And it's really important, I think, about setting your objective of what you're going to optimize for to be a business metric, because like you just touched on, if you optimize your creative for click-through rate, all you're doing is just optimizing for clickbait. And that's going to be a fast route to, it's like when you look at growth, people are like, this company's growing like crazy because it's getting shitloads of installs, but you don't consider the churn rate and it's actually dying. Then, if you're looking at that too close a metric, then that is a recipe for absolute disaster.
One last note on that. Also kind of, choose the same optimization goal for your testing campaigns than you have in your scaled campaigns. Like I see oftentimes people try to test creative in an install optimized campaign rather than optimizing for the app event that's truly valuable to them. And these are totally different algorithms. And like an install optimized campaign will push for cheap installs, which don't necessarily convert into cheap trials and cheap purchases. So I try to always use an experimentation setup that mimics what I'm doing in the scale campaign, so I can be sure the learnings actually transfer.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. It's a fantastic piece of advice. And then what's your feeling around kind of manually handling those tests versus letting Facebook do its automated creative testing? And then maybe a broader to get your view on the kind of general move to add a budget, chuck some creative in, and then just leave the platform to optimize for you. So maybe first at a creator level, and then second, your view on the whole, that kind of push towards automation.
Yeah. So kind of where I use automation is usually on headlines and body text. So I always add multiple versions there, let Facebook do the job. And then like once a month, I go in and check, okay, which combinations actually did good, throw out the 3 poorest performers, add new ones. And over time, kind of my copy set gets better and better, because that's usually a job that otherwise doesn't get done. Like usually if you add one body text, one headline, that's the one that always stays there, and you copy your ad, you do a new ad, but it's always the same copy. So that's for me an easy win to give away for automation. When it comes to the creative testing itself, since I'm working with subscription apps, same thing again, like the algorithm doesn't know the true business goal. So I'm kind of interfering with it a lot more, and I'm setting up the tests in the way we just discussed. Otherwise, like the closer you get to a business goal, the more you can give away. So for D2C, things are a lot easier just because the purchase happens on web. It's easier to track. It happens fast. So kind of you can set up an Advantage Plus shopping campaign. You throw all your creatives in there and you just let it do the job. And then after a while, you might see trends again that maybe video gets more reach than statics, and you might want to single that out. But besides that, like the D2C accounts I'm seeing are much more automated than the subscription apps accounts I see. Like in subscription apps, like I don't just run like Advantage Plus and hope for Facebook to do the job.
Nice. That's good to know.
Love that. And do you think that the whole industry in 5 years' time will be, or do you think Facebook will ever force us to just be Advantage Plus only? And just because there's so much in the weeds tweaking you can do. And even I beginning to think like, is there any point going to the level of like tweaking budget caps and all that kind of stuff? But, I think you're on the other side of the fence and you still believe it is a point to do that for a relevant business. But do you think we will be pushed in a direction where the platform forces us to just set and forget?
Yeah. I mean, they are doing so already, but I don't see them just taking away the other options. I mean, you still have like interest targeting and all this stuff in there from years ago, and it's not widely used anymore. So I would say they're going to leave the option, but of course they're going to always kind of give away the recommendation, go broad, go full automation. And it does help for a lot of cases. Like I think them recovering in the last month is based on them making kind of Advantage Plus shopping work for retail and D2C. And that's where a lot of growth is happening. That's how Reels are becoming like a more and more important placement. So there's a lot of value in it, but I don't see them taking away the other options. And once they're also going into kind of generative AI and actually your ad creative gets produced by the algorithm, then it also gets really, really interesting to see what happens if you kind of fully automate and actually just set your purchase goal and tell them I have 1K a day and see what happens. So yeah, I'm excited for those days to see what happens.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time where we're going into the hour now, but we had I think we had one last question or a topic to talk about, especially talking about automations and kind of like after the creative, talking about placements with the launch of Threads. We kind of wanted to talk about, jam around the idea of what do we think about Threads becoming maybe sooner than we think, a placement for ads as an addition opportunity. Have you thought of that? And maybe before that, what do you think about Threads? Tell us.
So I haven't tried it, but I also never really used Twitter. So the whole buzz kind of went past me.
Interesting.
Generally, I would be very excited of kind of another major placement added, just because kind of audience network basically went away on iOS since ATT. So if you kind of have additional reach there, that could be very interesting. And generally, I think what's so powerful about meta ads is that you can create this media mix within one platform, just because you have all these different placements. So for example, when you do more static ads that are more informational, they tend to deliver more on the Facebook feed, while it's more this lifestyle imagery and video that is working well on the Instagram feed. And then you have kind of 9 to 16 UGC videos driving performance on Reels and Stories. So by kind of running this as a mix, you can really talk to users along the customer journey. Put you're talking to objections and people that are already aware of your product in your statics, and they get delivered on another platform then where they get educated, then where you kind of drive them down the funnel with a discount if they're sitting on the fence. And kind of adding Threads into that mix would be a really, really interesting one, just because it's even more about information than a Facebook, I would say. So you can really think about these paid content approaches where you maybe as a first touch point or as educational content drive people to your blog from there. And it's part of your kind of strategy that then people kind of first read a blog article, then they see a couple of UGCs, and then you convert them through a static ad with kind of handling objections on it. So I see it as a very interesting placement in that media mix.
Nice. I like that answer. Really cool.
Something you wrote recently, Marcus, was about the importance of, or your opinion of the importance of the different placements, exactly what you just touched on there. And I think that's really cool, because a lot of people, myself included, to be honest, the kind of routine of building out your ad set is customize placements, remove everything other than the feed and stories. And so I think there is value and reach and maybe cheap CPMs to be had in the placements that people just think, I don't want to be there, if you, as you say, you're kind of utilizing them in the right way. So I think that was really interesting, and anyone that finds it interesting, go and read Marcus's post about his thoughts on that. But then as a Threads as a placement, it's such a scrollable feed, I guess. And I feel like it's going to unlock a massive amount of inventory, really, ad inventory, because it's in the same space as you would scroll two Instagram posts, you'll be scrolling 3 or 4 threads. So it's going to be interesting to maybe capitalize, or as a previous guest, Cody, would say, use the arbitrage that's going to suddenly appear in those first few months. Whenever a new placement opens up, there's massive reach to be had at a cheap cost. So I think whenever they do it, whatever the consideration is, it would be silly not to jump on it and just take advantage of potentially huge CPMs, or low CPMs.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I think most people run with Advantage Plus placements, so probably that's just going to get added, and most advertisers don't even notice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really about also thinking about that placement. I rarely ever limit my placements. I mean, yeah, usually I start with Advantage Plus placement, and then kind of only if I see certain placements really not perform at all, I might take some out. I've seen some good results with kind of real stories, these 9 to 16 video placements as a standalone ad set, but usually I would go with Advantage Plus placements, but then really think about, which creative will deliver on which placement, and look into breakdowns, like where are these spending. Also, I always tell my clients, like, if you don't know how to iterate or how to come up with creative ideas, like check like which creative works on which placement. And if there's if you had one winner and that one actually spent on Reels while all your other creatives are on feed, then think about, okay, like maybe Reels is a good placement for me. How can I get into that placement? Why did this one ad work there? And it just adds a whole nother kind of layer to take into consideration when iterating on ads. And I think kind of threads would be a really, really strong addition to this, and thinking about like what's the kind of information people consume there, how is it formatted, and what my ads need to look like to be added to that mix. And yeah, for example, at Blinkist, we did quite well on Twitter ads back then, while I haven't seen it working for any other company, just because the product fit quite well, because it was in the end, consuming content, consuming education. And we also kind of did the ads in a format that was like driving people to a blog post, basically, where we wrote about how Blinkist is this awesome company with this awesome app, and you become an awesome person if you use it. And from there, we redirected them to the App Store. So that was the funnel, and you had this first step that was kind of a piece of news, and that went well with the Twitter audience. And now, if you're able to add this into your meta ads kind of media mix, and Facebook has full visibility on who's reading these articles, but then also who am I showing UGC and who am I showing static ads or carousels, I think that becomes a very, very powerful mix.
I love that. That's good advice. Yeah, I like it. All right, I think that's a wrap.
We've just got like a free £1,000 value consulting tool, Marcus. We should be paying you for this.
I hope so.
It's fine. We're gonna give you, Marcus, 1,000 listeners to this episode. So that's the exchange.
Nice.
We're doing our best to push that.
£1 for a listen sounds like a good deal.
That's it. For an hour listen.
Yeah, amazing. So anyone listening, if you need any advice with your meta ads or broader ads type stuff, obviously you know now that Marcus is expert. So find him on LinkedIn, give him a follow, and get in touch with some of that knowledge. Hopefully we can get some inbound leads for you, Marcus. That'd be great. That
would be great, yeah. But otherwise, just follow me on LinkedIn. I'm happy if my vanity metric grows. To get that dopamine
get the dopamine. That's it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Marcus. It was awesome.
Thanks, guys. Really enjoyed it. And Jake, enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot about that myself. Actually, I'll try. I got to survive the journey there with the kids first.
Thanks, guys.
Wow, man, I feel my brain is like fried from. There's so many things he said that I was like, I'm really glad I'm recording this, because it's like there's too much for me to process. I need to watch the video back myself and start making notes from it.
It just made me realize ads I'm running on Nude right now are very basic. I can do a lot better than that if I pay that guy to do it.
That's the crazy thing, though, right? Because when you're doing, if you've got a small team and it's just like you and maybe one other, you haven't got the time to commit to doing those tiny, like minute optimizations and doing all of that stuff. So I think it's really when it comes really useful to just hire a specialist to just nail your Facebook ads.
Yeah.
What will be interesting with this one is to look at the retention rate, because obviously if you're just more general, you might be like, I can't be asked to listen to people talk about like the specific stuff that we went into, but there'll be a lot of people that'll be really interested in that more than just some of the general stuff we talk about. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one performs in terms of
it's retention. A good mix. We went from very broad and like laughing and making jokes to like suddenly talking about creative setup and scan SDKs and
Yeah, I think the flow was perfect. We're getting a lot better at doing that, the segues through.
Yeah. And people are saying it, like in the message like that we get back from the auto DMs and stuff, like the people that already listen to, they really enjoy the way it flows as just the normal conversation from topics to topics. And I think what helps as well is in every show notes on YouTube, also on the podcast and stuff, the timestamps. Because if it was me, I was just listening to us talking, I would just cherry pick. I would just go, okay, I want to hear about that bit, and then you go 24 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. Like you jump back and forth between the thing, and you might find the segues be interesting. So suddenly you're going 3 topics in a row because you found a bit that is like flow better.
Exactly.
I think that helps, because not you'd be surprised in the top 10 marketing podcasts that not all of them, if not any of them, do any timestamps. So like it's another thing that is like it's not that common yet in podcasts. On YouTube it is, because then it creates the segment in the video automatically, and the title that we get from Swell, they get added to the name of the segment. So it's brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, it's very.
They've already been called dopey on YouTube, so you know.
And the guy on YouTube that thought you were stoned.
Yeah. They're not dopey, stoned. You know who else was saying that before? It's not the first time people are saying it. There was one other person who said it. It was Will Shu, the founder of Deliveroo. At 3 occasions in the 2 years I worked there, because I was very close to where he was working, like very close in a desk kind of type of way.
Uh-huh.
He would just come up to me randomly in some mornings and be like, "Have you smoked weed, Johan, this morning?" And I'm like, "Why?" Like, because the way you speak is very, like, it sounds really relaxed, really slow, really relaxed. And I was like, "No, I don't smoke weed when I go to work." And like when the founder asks you this, it makes you wonder. But he did it like 2 or 3 times. I was like, "Oh, fuck's sake! Like, what's going on?"
Maybe he was looking for a hookup.
Yeah, maybe. I'm back for sure. He was smoking weed for sure.
I love that. Yeah, someone at Ben at Hex said he was like that. He liked your voice. He could listen to your voice to like as like a sleep story. It's like a nice voice that sends you to sleep. So maybe if we get super successful, you'll be invited to Calm to record a sleep story.
I'll do that anytime. I'll do that. Maybe that's why my kids like me reading stories to them. They fall asleep. Maybe that's why. Yeah.
Maybe you should sign off now with telling everyone to have a good night in your most sleepy voice.
All right, everybody, have a good night.